Hey, folks, welcome back to another Think With Me Thursday here at Effective. I'm Justin, your host, and today is a nice, wonderful day. On the stream today, we're going to dig into a couple of different things. First up is I've got a question from Lucas about changing monitors and what the best monitor setup is for a productivity workspace. We will talk about that. I've got a lot of different experience. I've tried a lot of different things over the years, and so I've got some insights to share into that. Additionally, this last week, I shared a poll over on the channel, which I'll pop a link in the chat for you real quick if you haven't seen that yet. But basically, I'm just asking what your favorite task manager is. We'll break down the results there. And then lastly, just planning to spend a little bit more time exploring Logseq. Last week was a good primer into the basics of the software. And this week, we're going to do a little bit more. Welcome, Nicholas. Glad to have you on the stream today. But yeah, we're going to dive in here in just a little bit. Just before we get started, though, if you're interested in supporting what we're doing here at Effective, there's three ways you can do it. First, super chat your questions in today on the live stream. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Second, become a channel member. There's some options here where you can support us on a recurring basis right here on YouTube, youtube.com/effectiveco/join if you're interested in joining there. And then three, if those aren't appealing to you at this moment in time, send a super thanks out on your favorite video on the channel. That would be the best way to support what we're doing here at Effective so we can keep making amazing productivity and personal knowledge management resources to help people live effective and impactful lives. Anyway, we're going to get started. First question today is from Lucas, as I mentioned. He mentioned in a comment on last week's live stream of suggestions for the Think With Me episode. I've been changing monitors for a while. I had 24, 30, 40 inches 4K monitor. I'm thinking ultra wide or two identical monitors. I can't really make up my mind, and I don't know which is better, a wide monitor or a small one that you can focus on more. I can see a wide monitor in the background. Can you share your experiences? And so, yeah, just to give you a little bit of background on my existing setup right now. Over here, you can see that, yes, I do have a wide monitor. This is a 38-inch ultra wide. It's an LG. I had it for probably 6 or 8 months now, and I love it. But I want to just kind of walk through some of my thought process as to setting up a desk for productivity in relation to monitors and displays, because there's a lot of weird things that can come into play with this. First and foremost, just to give a bit of background, I've had a lot of different desk setups. I've tried a lot of different things. I'm going to pull up on the screen here a couple of resources to share with you. So over on the old forum here, there's a video over on the channel, which I'll also share in the in the chat if you want to check it out, where I upgraded my home office last year, got a new desk, and set everything up kind of nicely and differently, and wanted to show you the end result of that. You can see on the screen here, though, that I had this 2 monitor setup. These were 2 Dell 27-inch 4K displays, one in portrait landscape mode, the other one in portrait mode. This was because at that time I was still largely doing a lot of development work, having a couple of different terminal windows over up on the long screen is a little bit easier to deal with sometimes, especially when you need to read a lot of code at once and reference other code. That was really helpful to have that set up. But there was one challenge that I kept running into with having 2 27-inch displays. One, if you just have them in landscape mode right next to each other, you constantly have to be turning your head to look. If I can find a good example of this, maybe I'll pull up Miro and draw it up for us all here. All right, this is from a video that I was working on earlier today, so that's going to drop next week on Tuesday. So if you want to catch that, be sure to do so. I'm just going to do a quick drawing here on Miro to try to explain what I mean, because I think it's easier to do it with visuals. Okay, say this is a 2 by 27 inch monitor setup. Say this is you sitting in the middle here, because this is probably where it makes the most sense, right? To sit when you have a monitor setup like this. The problem here is that you're looking straight at a bezel right in the middle. And so you got to look all the way over here and all the way over here to see what's going on. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind with this as well is that you need to have an ergonomic setup. Your monitor needs to be a certain distance away from you. Otherwise, you're going to be leaning into it and hunching yourself over. But you also don't want it too close either, so that you're like straining way far back. It needs to be in a good setup. Your keyboard needs to be at a proper distance so you're not reaching for it. So your arms are more tucked back in to your side. Same thing with your mouse. These things all impact a monitor setup and a desk setup so that it's most effective for you. So this is kind of how I originally started with my 2 monitor setup, and I was just finding the turning to be too much neck strain. I was also really only using 1 monitor primarily for the majority of work that I was doing, and so having to crane my neck basically the entire time I was sitting at the desk wasn't the best situation. So what I decided to do then was use a monitor arm and then position myself in front of 1 monitor and using the other monitor as a reference. This did decrease neck strain because I was primarily working on this one and I really just had to look over here. However, as I was using this reference monitor at times, I was finding that kind of trying to get all the way over to this edge here was causing a lot of neck and shoulder strain for me, because I would have to look like this to actually find the information that I was looking for. And so that's when I started to experiment with the vertical orientation and having something like this, as I showed you here. And so this makes a lot of sense because you can turn this monitor in towards you. The one downside though is that many monitors are not built for a vertical orientation. Sometimes they work okay. Sometimes they get a little funny with color and such when you use them in a vertical orientation. So this worked a little bit better, but 27 inches over here can get a little bit nutso to try to deal with. And so then the next thing I tried to do from there was to do some kind of stacked monitors, which was really kind of an interesting thing in some of my earlier videos on the channel. Let's see if we can find one actually, because I think I probably have one where we can see it really early on in the background. Let's see, where's my Obsidian Made Simple? Yeah, you can't quite see it there. Oh yeah, okay. I'm gonna pop this one open here real quick. I'm gonna turn the volume up so you can see in the background here. I've got this behemoth monstrosity of the double stacked monitors there, 27-inch displays. That did not work so well. It was a really great idea in practice, but I was finding that I had to look way up high, way down low. It eliminated this neck strain, but this didn't work so well. I tried this for maybe 2 weeks and I had to switch out of it. So long story short, I've completely abandoned using 2 monitors for any kind of video work or any kind of work that I'm doing whatsoever. And the reason being is I found ultra wides and I finally have found something that I really like. I really enjoy. This is the ultra wide that I have. Now keep in mind that this is a bit spendy, but my previous work bought it. It's a Thunderbolt 3 display, which is why. But it's 38 inches wide. I mean, it's got some heft. It's got some size to it. But what I love about it is it's like you've stacked 2 24-inch displays right next to each other. There's no bezel. And then if you use your window management well, you can have a window set up, like see the outline over here on the zoom. you can basically have a window set up dead center there and then have supporting windows that you're referencing off to the sides. And that's what I love about it. It just makes doing work so much easier and so much less straining. Plus, this particular display, it's got 144 hertz refresh rate, which I really like. It's fairly high resolution. It's not quite 4K, but it's QHD plus, and that's pretty rare to find in an ultra wide. I know many of the ultra wides are like 1440p tops, and that's all right. But I like the crisp resolution. On this streaming desk that I have right here, I have one of the 27-inch Dell 4K displays plugged in right in front of me here, down low. I'll have to do a walkthrough of this setup sometime. And then I have my MacBook over here on a stand just because I need a second display while I'm streaming. Yeah, and then Clement's bringing in the chat, mentioning this this diagram here, the lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good. This chaotic and lawful frame when you're in regards to monitor setups. That's pretty funny. I love that. Yeah, Colin, I will definitely share that in the chat. There is the affiliate link. It is an affiliate link, just so you know. You can take the tag off the end of it so that it won't be an affiliate. But that is that monitor, the LG 38-inch that I currently use. But yes. Clement says, okay, so you're chaotic neutral. Well, not quite. I wouldn't say I'm chaotic neutral anymore. I don't know what ultra wide counts for because it's not on this this diagram anymore. But yes, this is what I was thinking of here. So to answer Lucas's question overall, I think probably if you're to try to decide between two identical monitors and an ultra wide, hold on a second here. I think if you were try to decide between, I think if you were trying to decide between two identical monitors and an ultra wide, if you could afford going an ultra wide route and your computer can basically drive displaying an ultra wide, because some older machines, especially running internal graphics, can really chug when trying to drive a 38-inch ultra wide display, I would recommend trying an ultra wide out. I really like having the one monitor on the desk. It's really clean, but it offers all the same screen real estate as having two displays. You don't have to have two monitor arms, though I will say that for a 38-inch ultra wide, you need to have a pretty chunky, beefy monitor arm if you're going to use something other than the included stand. So be aware of that. But hands down, the best monitor solution that I have found and used is an ultra wide. Now, there is something to say of what is the best width of an ultra wide, because you can get curved displays that are 27 inches, and those are nice. I mean, it's really nice if you can stack those side to side because you get a little bit more curve. You don't have that flat edge problem that we were talking about previously. But when you have a smaller curved display, I think the benefit is a lot lower. A 49-inch ultra wide may be a little extreme for productivity. I mean, that's a huge display. The Samsung G9 is one of them. I haven't sat in front of one of these before, but just the thought of having a 49-inch wide display in front of me is overwhelming. I know they're great for gaming, so if you're into gaming, I'm not. But if you're into gaming, you might want to consider doing something like that. But for me, the prime size that I have found is 38 inches. It's the right width. It doesn't take up too much space on your desk, but it gives you enough screen real estate to get the work done. Clement says, I agree. I have a cheaper one, Dell 34-inch plus my MacBook Pro small display to use occasionally. Yeah, and that's the other beauty about having, if you hook one of these up to a laptop, is that you get the opportunity to use that laptop display if, for say, you need a second reference monitor. Generally, if I'm just working on something focusedly, I'll have one monitor in front of me. Say this morning I was doing some recording and editing for a video next week. I was just using the one monitor, one display right in front of me here. I wasn't using the laptop display over to the side. That being said, having this laptop display available is very handy for the fact that when I'm running these live streams, I need to have chat open. And if I'm sharing my screen, it's really difficult to have chat open inside of Restream on the same screen unless I'm only sharing a window. And today, since we're diving into Logseq a little bit later, I wanted to be able to share the whole screen because I'll be doing some research in the midst of that too. So with that, if there's any other questions about monitors or displays, feel free to pop them in the chat. Happy to share more about my experiences. But from there, I would love to jump to your favorite task managers. Last week, I conducted a poll on the effective community posts thing in YouTube, whatever they're called these days. And 129 of you have voted between Todoist, OmniFocus, Things3, Asana, and others. 37% said their favorite task manager is Todoist, OmniFocus at 12%, Things3 20, Asana 3, and 28% other. We'll dive into the comments in just a second, but I wanted to share a couple of interesting thoughts that I had in regard to this in just a minute. Because one, I didn't fully expect to see Todoist take 37% of the vote. But two, I honestly expected this long-standing task manager of OmniFocus to have a higher percentage. OmniFocus was the task manager for a number of years, but I also recognize, and other folks that have seen, like Curtis McHale, have seen kind of OmniFocus lagging behind the competition. And I am a little concerned with OmniFocus 4 with the feedback that I've heard. There's a few folks over on the forum that have talked about how OmniFocus 4 is just not really cutting it for them, despite having been OmniFocus users for years. Many of the changes in the app are really not bringing the improvements that they need. Unfortunately, I think my main concern comes down to the fact that OmniFocus might be going the direction of Evernote in terms of features. Instead of focusing on building the features that their community needs, they're reinventing the application over and over and over again to try to keep up. Unfortunately, it's taking them a very long time to get onto that. No, that's just me not having really been connected to the OmniFocus ecosystem for a couple of years. Haven't really messed around with it too much. I know there's a number of powerful things that you can still do with it, and people still swear by it. But that doesn't mean that OmniFocus is a bad software. I was just really surprised by seeing this number being low. Now, Things3, that makes a lot of sense to me. The major downside with Things, though, is that it is iOS and Mac only. If you have to work cross-platform at all, which many people do, because most businesses run Windows PCs for their network and environment, you won't be able to access your tasks on that system through Things3. OmniFocus has OmniFocus for web, but I don't want to talk about that. And then Todoist makes a lot of sense to me. It's the cleanest, most well-recognized cross-platform task management app. There's a ton of flexibility with it. And I still have some qualms with how they decide to do things. It can be a little tricky to figure out what to do and where, especially because they've loaded the scheduled dates feature together with due dates. And to me, that just not having them separated out doesn't make sense. But I can understand adding a second date feature in the user interface might diminish user experience as well. Let's get into the comments here on the poll. One, Vachia says to do. That's been a long-standing one. Gundam136 says tick tick. Tick tick has been an interesting one. Someone also commented here. Taran. It's the best single app on the whole of Android. And so that's the other thing to keep in consideration too. There's a number of people who need cross-platform support also on Android, not even just on Windows. And so TickTick is available there. So is Todoist. Floor says Amazing Marvin. Got Task Warrior, Obsidian, Dynalist, Evernote, and Google Calendar and the Tasks sidebar. So there's a wide variety of uses for or of task managers that people are using. But I guess what I want to try to get into here on this is why Todoist? We've talked about it a little bit as to how it's available, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Like, why do you think most people are gravitating towards Todoist as their task management app of choice? Colin is mentioning that he's fortunately all Apple, so I love Things. Yeah, Things is a great app. It's super clean and it runs and functions so well. I think that sets them far and above the bar, even though they don't have some of the insane power features of OmniFocus. There's a lot of it still there in the app, and it does what it does extremely well. Clement says, Todoist because I'm a huge fan of the company running it. Okay, so I think this is getting into some marketing talk today, but I think you're probably on to something there. Todoist is an awesome company. They're fully remote. If you haven't checked out Doist before, go to doist.com. See what they stand for, what they're all about. It's not just a productivity app. They really actually are creating a company to help people live their best lives in a lot of ways. And they do that through being fully asynchronous and remote in their work. They were really one of the leaders in the asynchronous space for a long time. One of the only companies that was pushing that mode of remote working. And they were one of the most notable, and still they are one of the most notable companies. And what is amazing to me is that they've stayed so small over the course of the years. I think they have only about 100 employees, and they've been around for a long time. And so to keep that level of measured growth for that long while still maintaining a profitable company is amazing. But speaking to Clement's comment here, I think that one of the key factors of why people gravitate towards Todoist is the company, is the brand, what they stand for. And when it's unclear what a company stands for, I think people are a little less likely to adopt a tool, or they're more likely to shift away to something else when something new and shiny comes along. So when you're invested in a brand, I think that really helps. Colin's mentioning Things is so incredibly designed. Agreed that Doist as a company and their focus on async is great. That I will say that Things and Todoist are two of the best designed task apps that I have ever used. Things probably a level above Todoist, and I think Todoist just largely because it's a web app. And so there are certain interactions on different platforms that just feel a little different or might feel a little chunky because they're either re-implementing it directly native on that platform, or they're using some kind of a wrapper system to have that app there. I know they've really done a lot of work on this. I remember their Windows 10 application had a completely different feel and experience to it than that. But yeah, being able to develop for one platform like Things has and really highly focus on the user experience, the quality of the interactions, the design of the app itself, it really makes the app. But Colin is mentioning Things lack of a free plan is a barrier for many. Sure, that's true too. I had forgotten that Todoist has a free plan, and price very much is a factor in that. Todoist's yearly plan is also very inexpensive. For a while, I think it was only $29 a year. Now I think it's $39 if I remember correctly. It's still really inexpensive for a year to use that application. I know one of the things that tripped me up a little bit just in the last year or two with Todoist was them switching their payment plans for Todoist free, or the features available. they made it really more like a restricted free tier, like a infinite free trial with limited features. You could only have like 5 projects in it at that point. And I think you can use labels and labels and filters now. But yeah, that was one of the things that was like, oh, that kind of struck me as odd. But I get it, because they probably needed to start converting more of their free users into paid. Because when you have so many free users, it just gets unsustainable over the long term to do that. Clement, both are pretty simple compared to OmniFocus. Yeah, I think just about everything except for Amazing Marvin is simple compared to OmniFocus. Let's put it that way. I haven't really used anything that's much more complicated. Amazing Marvin is, how do I put this? A mess. I don't want to knock on the developers at all, because they're really trying to do a good job with that app, and it does serve some people well. But from a user experience standpoint, that design and the app is so complicated. I'm just really not sure how people figure out how to use it. But yes, OmniFocus is very complex. And you can keep it simple, but there's a lot of complexity in the midst of that. And I think a lot of that might have to do with it being primarily designed around getting things done, and trying to create flexibility in that for different styles of workflows, but still using the getting things done methodology primarily. So there's some rigidity in it too. And I think that's what turns some people off, is that there's not the flexibility of, I guess, Todoist, where you can view things in boards and you can, basically stack projects on top of each other. Basically, you can treat a project as a folder for other projects instead of actually it being a project. And you can put tasks in it and things of that sort. But yeah, OmniFocus is just, it's another level when it comes to complexity. Let's see here. All right, I'm interested to see if, okay. So Peter Aki's as a OmniFocus 4 beta tour. Just trying to see. That's funny. Anybody catch that? Things 4. Stranger Things 4. Let's see what he's got here. Okay, this might be a little bit easier to take a look at than trying to pull up a video on stream. So this is Peter Aki's article from a year ago, looking at the OmniFocus 4 preview. I think this is the other thing that's a bit challenging with OmniFocus 4, is that it's been in development for a really long time now. And it still looks very much like OmniFocus. It just has a little bit different of an organization to it. Looking at this, it's like, what is going on here? Now, this is coming from me, a person who I've primarily used. I used OmniFocus for probably 4 or 5 years as my primary task manager. And then I just, for whatever reason, I will be honest with you, I could not keep using it anymore. Every time I open up the app, I would just get stressed out. And I don't know why, but it's not the case with other apps. Just OmniFocus. Colin. Yeah, Things 4. I know, that was kind of funny. It'll be interesting to see what Cultured Code does with Things 4, though, because I know Things 3 has been out for quite a long time. And that is kind of an interesting thing, too, with their waterfall mode of development, basically. Todoist does a really great job of iterative updates, but these other longer-standing software companies still do a lot of waterfall development where they just do a bunch of work and release it all at once in a big update. And it'll be interesting to see how they can stack up in the long term. Yeah, so he's saying here that he's felt OmniFocus has lagged behind. OmniFocus information density is high, which I fully agree. All right, so here's the big changes in OmniFocus 4. Focus modes on mobile, quick open, redesigned inspector, navigation view, inline editing. Inline editing is nice because that was something that was such a pain point on mobile for OmniFocus. I definitely like a little bit more of how this is laid out here in the project view. You know, it's a little bit more condensed, a little easier to see stuff. What he says here too is that OmniFocus 4 looks prettier than OmniFocus 3. Yeah, I hope so. But it doesn't look modern. Still looks like a database. So this is an interesting thing because if you don't know the history, OmniFocus was birthed out of an Omni outliner set of customizations called Kinkless GTD. This was ages ago now. And then Omni Group decided to say, hey, this is a really great idea. Let's turn this into an application. And so as a result, OmniFocus is still really true to its roots of being an outline in a lot of ways, but the outline just has checkboxes in front of it. I mean, look at this. I mean, it literally is an outline. You can't really add anything else in here. It's really difficult to add notes. You know, there's little descriptions that you can add to tasks and things of that sort, but it's really largely just an outline. It is a database of tasks, as Peter mentions here. Yeah, so there's not a lot of screenshots in here, and that's fine. This is his Things 3 setup. Man, I didn't realize Things 3 came out in 2017. That was quite a while ago now. But he's very right in saying here that it looks cleaner and makes better use of the space. I think Things 3 still looks like a modern design, even after 5 years. It is held up so well over the course of time. It's just they really hit it out of the park with that design. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there are some changes that they should undergo with it, but just spruce it up, make it a little bit more useful. But I haven't used it closely enough. Anyway, I think that about wraps up the discussion on the poll on what your favorite task manager is. If there's any other, I might start doing some more content around Todoist and maybe even Things 3 on the channel. We'll see. More task manager oriented things. If there's anything specific that you want to see, do let me know in the chat or in the comments, or let me know in the link below, the Ask Effective section in the description, if you're interested in covering anything on the live streams or in videos. Now we're just going to get ready to do some exploring in Logseq. Do just a little bit of cleanup here. All right, so last week on the stream, I really just didn't do anything crazy inside of Logseq. I was literally just trying to try things out, giving my first impressions of it, trying embedding and referencing and features and linking and PDF annotations, some to-do items, just capturing thoughts, trying to figure it out. I really do like the modality of Logseq. I don't know at this point in time if I'm going to adopt anything like this inside of my day-to-day workflow. I'm pretty embedded in Obsidian, and while I might experiment a little bit with using Logseq alongside of my day-to-day Obsidian Vault, we'll see. I'm not fully committed at that yet. But today I wanted to, something that was kind of interesting me is to dig a little bit more into task management inside Logseq, because that was one thing last week I couldn't quite figure out. I've got this article from Shuomi over here about how he uses Logseq from, about 6 months ago or so. So he uses it as a timeline note taker, which I think is really interesting. I'm gonna open this a little wider so we can see these images bigger. So I find this an interesting approach to note taking, to being able to write down the time when you're doing something. There is a practice that you can do. I can't remember the exact name of it, but the idea is that when you stop doing something, you write down the time and then what you were just working on. This is kind of a play on that, it seems like, or the time that you're doing something. Okay, I'm starting doing this at 9:22, thinking about these things, 11:47, and so on. You can kind of get a sense of what you were doing at that time. I like his way of handling that. That's an interesting thought. So he imports highlights through Obsidian from Readwise. And he has Obsidian and Logseq sharing the same folder. That makes sense. Atomic flashcards. That's interesting. So instead of creating atomic notes in a form of Zettelkasten, he is basically turning them into flashcards to memorize them or to revisit them. Which this is interesting because it's almost duplicative of what Readwise does. But it also makes sense too, because Readwise is really good for taking in highlights from other places. And then Logseq is really good at kind of condensing your information and displaying it differently. Taking your own notes, being able to surface those. Content ideas. So just a pause here too. He saves content ideas inside of Logseq. But then when it comes to longer form content, he uses Notion to organize that. And this is something that I have done in the past and I've seen done, and it's something I want to draw attention to, is that with the very different types of work that are being done, sometimes different tools are best suited for that. So for me, most of my work management right now is happening inside of Notion. I have a whiteboard over here on my wall that's just kind of showing the main activities that I have slated. And then Notion is where I'm doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff as far as content creation. So planning out these live streams and any pre-recorded videos that I'm doing, and then going from there. So there are different tools that are better suited for that. So, and it's okay to keep them separated. I know one thing that I was trying to do previously with content creation was, okay, I have these things set up inside of Notion, How do I bring them into my task manager so that I remember to do them? But to me, like the task manager isn't really best suited for that in a lot of ways, unless you're doing things at a very consistent time on a consistent day. Instead, it's almost better to use some kind of scheduling tool like Sunsama in the middle of both of those so that you can take your tasks that you need to get done, bring them into the day you need to get them done, bring in your projects that you're working on in a deep focus, such as a content piece that may or may not get done today, and then just work on them there and schedule it in. That seems to be a little bit more effective. Have a place to centralize your planning and then have repositories of information. So he has a page called, here's where we get to tasks. This is what I'm interested in here. Logseq tasks, where I can see the list of things to do. Queries, scheduling. Okay, so this is something that I wasn't quite sure on how to do last week. Clement says, I did an attempt to use Logseq. I enjoyed it a lot, but realized I could bring some features to Obsidian with some plugins and settings tweaks. The other way was not possible. Yeah, I think Logseq being an outline format is a bit more limited in what it can do. Not that that's a bad thing, but you can do outlines inside of Obsidian. You can't turn Logseq into a long form writing tool. It just doesn't work because it's built on short bullets. So this query language is actually pretty complicated. Okay. That's a lot less complicated than I was thinking it was going to be. Interesting. You can query by tag. So for example, I created a tag for OMS. Gonna edit this. How do I do that? Okay, you have to wrap them. I think. Let's try this. Yeah, this is it's a little futzy. Okay, that's kind of weird. Maybe that's not a tag. If that's the case, that'd be kind of unexpected. Well, that makes sense, but it makes sense that it's treating it as a page. But I find it interesting that it's trying to put this in here as a tag. Yeah, I'm doing it wrong. But it's interesting that using a hashtag like that is not creating it like a tag. Here's an interesting question. Can you title these? So then I could do this if I wanted to. Let's say so you can zoom in there. That is kind of handy to be able to do that. Clement, no, I have not seen the document mode when I press TD. Okay, so it just removes the bullets. Nice. That is nice. But yeah, so you still get the bullets there if you over. Oh, okay. I see. Basically just puts it all under one bullet. Yeah, I'm interested to see what this looks like if you export it or opening in directory. Yeah, so that is a little goofy. If you needed to pull that out and do something with it, you'd still have the one bullet up front. Obviously, you can take care of that pretty easily, but it's nice to be able to do that. I wonder what it looks like copying it out. Fits. Okay, so copying it out of there works as expected. So that's nice anyway. That's good to know. Thanks for the tip. I appreciate that. Yeah, it definitely does allow you to do a bit of long form text, which is helpful. Being able to do that is a positive thing, I think. Definitely a little goofy to try to do that though, but it makes sense. I do like the database style view, the table view here of all the pages. Again, the graph view is very nice. Works very similarly to Obsidian's. I actually like how it's a little bit easier to drag stuff around in this graph view versus Obsidian, so you can see stuff, see how it's related together. Yeah, we looked at that last week. Oh, let's just move through some slash commands here, see if there's anything else that we can do interestingly enough. You can do Zotero citations. That's really helpful if you're using that. YouTube timestamp. Oh, I want to try that. Hey, Matt, welcome back to the stream today. It was good to see you again. Yeah, we're just kind of poking around Logseq today. He's saying export is my biggest issue, like a solid pandoc export option. There is a PDF export plugin. Pandoc is nice if you need to transform something into another option or another format. I don't personally have a need for that right now. Might at some point, but to me, I tend to keep everything in one spot as much as possible and then like copy it out because I'm really only usually writing in Markdown. And so having it in Markdown already in Obsidian makes it pretty easy to work with. I want to see something. This is my very first Obsidian video. How long ago was that? 2 years, maybe? I'll expand this out to see. Does it even show? Yeah, it was 2 years ago. Wild. It's been that long. So I want to see how the timestamps work. Shift Command Y. Ooh, clever. That is so handy. That is one thing that I love about this, and I know Rome does this as well too. Really handy to be able to just have that straight in the interface here. Yeah, that's kind of a game changer. Oh, you can do it in the sidebar as well. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing with that. Open in sidebar. Okay. Let's try that. Cool. All right, so Matt says, just for a summary here, use Shift Command Y if you want to insert a timestamp while you're playing a video, either in the sidebar or in the main pane. You can play it in the sidebar, and then there's the Helium plugin that pins the video at the top when you generate a lot of text. So I can see that being really helpful if you've got bullets upon bullets upon bullets. Same with last week, Matt. Thanks so much for the very, very helpful insights. So I think I'm maybe going to look at one more thing. If there's something in particular you think is interesting for me to take a look at, do let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to probably sign off here in the next 5 minutes. Move on to the next thing. Tasks, honestly, were something that I was anticipating to be more complicated than it was, but I just needed to take 2 seconds and actually understand the query language. And while that's probably not the most approachable thing in the world for people, I do think that it's helpful to have it. And if you've got some chops and drive to figure that out, you could use Logseq for a pretty powerful task management style system using pages for capturing different tasks or tags, linking them there. And then also using those queries along with priorities and scheduled dates, deadlines, things of that sort. Could be a very, very flexible system. But again, as I mentioned on a live stream a couple of weeks ago, to me, using a tool like Logseq or Obsidian or even Notion for trying to be able to do any kind of task management, you should probably have 10 or even 20% of your time set aside to start out to make sure it works properly, because you have to configure these on your own. Going back to the previous segment where we were talking about favorite task managers, I think one of the reasons why people gravitate towards Things 3 and Todoist for their primary task managers is, one, Todoist allows you lots of flexibility, but it's within constraints. And so you can display information in a lot of different ways, but it's not overwhelming to do so. Things, you really have a set opinionated form of how the software works. There is a lot of flexibility within it as well, but it's very easy to get started. It's something called time to value. But yeah, Matt, I have looked at templates. Templates are, I think I looked at that last week. Yeah, where I was able to pop in a template. Yeah, where I created them here. That is a really, really interesting feature, I think. So, Clement, to your comment earlier about don't know how I connect and not have all YouTube ads inside of there. I didn't get an ad. I don't know. It shouldn't be because it's on my own channel and I'm logged in. Maybe it is. But I'm also running a Pi hole on my network, and so that kills a lot of the advertisements. And then on the browser side of thing, I'm running uBlock Origin, which blocks a lot of the ads too. I know it's kind of funny as a content creator, and I also do serve ads on my videos, which makes some money, but not a lot. I do block advertisements just because a lot of that content is so junky. I just don't want it on my computer or home network. It's just, we only have so much cognitive space, and there are some advertisements that I think are fine and some that are good, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. And it seems to be working right now. And now that I say that, it will probably stop working because I said it live on stream today. But overall, that is the story there. Oh yeah, YouTube Premium would be good. I don't have Premium, but it probably would make sense at some point. I do spend a fair bit of time on YouTube. Cool. Well, that really wraps up things for the stream today. Thank you all for hanging out with us. If you're on Twitter or LinkedIn watching this, welcome. Be sure to head on over to the channel at Think Effective. Well, not Think Effective, at youtube.com/effectiveco. And if you want to join the channel and become a member, youtube.com/effectiveco/join to join one of our memberships. But be sure to subscribe first and foremost. If you're not, we're here to help you become more productive and live an impactful life. 3 ways to support the channel if you want to. Again, 1, feel free to super chat any questions that you have or comments on these streams. 2, again, become a channel member. And 3, if you want, this is probably one of the easiest things you can do, is just go find your favorite video on the channel and give us super thanks on YouTube. Just click the super thanks button, and whatever you find is appropriate for that, do that. It highlights what you find the most valuable to me, and it also helps us continue making awesome content here on the channel. But with that, we're going to sign off. Thanks so much. Thanks, Matt and Clement, for hanging around the stream today. Thanks, Colin, for coming too, and everybody else who's been a part of this, even if you didn't pop into the chat. Feel free to jump in next time. We're here usually on Thursdays about 1 o'clock Central Time. And with that, I'm going to sign off. But in the meantime, until I talk to you again, stay effective.